The fluorescent lights of the quantum research facility flickered intermittently, casting long shadows across the laboratory's pristine white walls. Amber Thompson rubbed her eyes, fighting the exhaustion that threatened to consume her after another sleepless night of research. Scattered holographic displays surrounded her workstation, each projection showing complex neural network simulations that would have appeared nonsensical to anyone but the most advanced neuroscientists. Her current project had begun as a seemingly impossible challenge: understanding the universal communication patterns of sentient species across the galaxy. Most researchers had dismissed the concept as a theoretical impossibility, but Amber had always been different. Where others saw limitations, she saw potential waiting to be unlocked. The breakthrough came from an unexpected intersection of quantum communication theory and comparative xenobiology. Amber had been analyzing communication intercepts from various alien species, diplomatic transmissions, scientific exchanges, even fragments of intercepted military communications. Each dataset revealed a subtle pattern that most researchers had overlooked. "It's not about the content," she muttered to herself, tracing complex neural pathway simulations with her fingertips. "It's about the fundamental way information transfers between neural networks." Her team at the Quantum Dynamics Institute had been working on this project for years. Funded by a consortium of forward-thinking governments and private research organizations, they operated in a facility that was part scientific research center, part fortress of human innovation. The stakes were higher than most people understood. The current model of interstellar diplomacy was fundamentally broken. Alien civilizations had long operated under the assumption of their technological superiority, treating humanity as a minor species barely worth acknowledging. But Amber knew differently. Humans possessed something unique, an adaptability that defied traditional understanding of neural communication. Her latest simulation began to take shape. Holographic representations of neural networks from different species danced before her eyes. The Zorn Imperium's silicon-based communication pathways, the crystalline thought structures of the Creel Collective, the quantum-entangled consciousness of the Nexus Confederation, all showed remarkable similarities in their fundamental communication mechanisms. And within those similarities lay a vulnerability. Amber's fingers flew across the holographic interface, running increasingly complex scenarios. Each simulation revealed the same impossible conclusion. There existed a fundamental frequency range that could temporarily interrupt neural communication across multiple species, not through physical harm, but through a precise disruption of information transfer. "This can't be right," she whispered, running the simulation again. But it was right. Perfectly, terrifyingly right. The implications were staggering. A single technological innovation could potentially neutralize entire civilizations without firing a single weapon. No physical destruction, no loss of life, just a complete temporary shutdown of neural communication. Outside her laboratory, the world continued its usual rhythm. Most humans remained unaware of the potential revolution brewing within these sterile white walls. Global tensions continued, economic systems fluctuated, and humanity remained just another species struggling to make its mark in a vast, indifferent universe. But Amber knew better. Her research represented more than just a scientific breakthrough. It was a fundamental reimagining of interspecies communication, conflict resolution, and potential diplomatic engagement. The neural disruption frequency she had discovered could be a tool for peace, or the most potent weapon humanity had ever conceived. A notification pinged on her primary display. The research review board would be requesting her preliminary findings soon. Amber knew she would need to carefully frame her discovery. One wrong move could see her research buried, her findings classified, her potential world-changing breakthrough locked away in some government vault. She took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. The simulation continued to run, neural networks pulsing with potential, waiting to reveal their secrets. Humanity stood on the precipice of a new era, and Amber Thompson held the key. The fluorescent lights continued to flicker, a silent witness to a discovery that would soon change everything. The diplomatic station hung like a gleaming pearl against the dark backdrop of Jupiter's massive silhouette. Commander Jack Reynolds studied his reflection in the polished conference room window, adjusting the collar of his midnight blue diplomatic uniform. The device in his pocket felt impossibly light, a testament to the years of research that had culminated in this moment. Today would change everything. The Zorn diplomatic delegation arrived precisely at 900 hours, their arrival a choreographed display of technological superiority. Their exoskeletons shimmered with adaptive nanoplating, each movement a calculated demonstration of their species' advanced engineering. Standing over 2 meters tall, with crystalline sensory clusters where a human would have eyes, the Zorn representatives moved with an intimidating precision that had cowed countless species before humanity. Commander Reynolds, the lead diplomat, High Consul Vexnar, announced in a resonant frequency that vibrated through the conference room, "We are here to discuss the continued marginalization of human interests in the Galactic Consortium." Jack maintained a calm exterior, though his heart raced with the knowledge of what was about to transpire. The previous negotiations had been brutal, the Zorn repeatedly dismissing human technological capabilities, treating Earth's representatives as little more than primitive newcomers to galactic diplomacy. Not anymore. The conference room was a marvel of diplomatic engineering. Soundproofed walls lined with communication dampeners, holographic displays capable of rendering multiple translation matrices, and a carefully neutral color scheme designed to minimize psychological tension. But today, it would become the stage for humanity's most audacious demonstration. Amber Thompson's research had provided more than just a theoretical breakthrough. The neural disruption frequency was precise, targeted, and completely reversible. More importantly, it worked across multiple neural network architectures, a universal key that could temporarily freeze communication pathways. Jack's fingers brushed against the small device in his pocket. No larger than an old-fashioned memory stick, it represented years of classified research, billions in funding, and the collective innovative spirit of human scientific endeavor. High Consul Vexnar continued his typical posturing. The human species continues to demonstrate a remarkable inability to understand the complexities of interstellar diplomacy. Your technological capabilities err. The words died mid-sentence. Not with a dramatic explosion, not with a weapon discharge, but with a simple, almost imperceptible pulse that traveled through the conference room at a frequency no human could detect. The Zorn delegation froze. Literally froze. Their crystalline sensory clusters remained perfectly positioned, mouths open in mid-sentence, bodies locked in whatever position they had been occupying when the pulse was released. Only the human delegation remained unaffected, moving normally as if nothing had happened. Jack allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Years of being talked down to, of being treated as a secondary species, were about to end. Dr. Matthew Collins, the lead xenolinguist on the team, stepped forward. "Fascinating," he muttered, examining the frozen Zorn representatives. "Complete neural pathway interruption without any physical damage." The implications were staggering. Humanity had discovered a method of diplomatic negotiation that rendered traditional power dynamics obsolete. No weapons, no violence, just a complete, temporary shutdown of communication. Outside the conference room, news would spread quickly. The Galactic Consortium would be in chaos. Species that had long ignored or marginalized humanity would suddenly be forced to reconsider their assumptions. "Prepare the documentation," Jack instructed his team. "Full scientific reports, diplomatic transcripts, video evidence. We want no room for misinterpretation." The frozen Zorn would remain in this state for precisely 47 minutes, a duration calculated by Amber's team to demonstrate control without causing permanent damage. Long enough to make a point, short enough to avoid genuine diplomatic incident. As the minutes ticked by, Jack reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. Decades of being the underdog. Decades of technological catch-up. Decades of being told they were too young, too primitive, too inexperienced to matter on the galactic stage. Those days were over. When the Zorn representatives finally unfroze, they would remember this moment. The day humanity proved it was not to be underestimated. The first pulse had been fired, and the galaxy would never be the same. The converted research bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains hummed with a nervous energy. Michael Rodriguez stood before a holographic display, his fingers tracing the intricate neural mapping that would become the foundation of humanity's most revolutionary psychological defense mechanism. "We're not building a weapon," he told the assembled team of scientists, military strategists, and neural communication experts. "We're building a deterrent." The room was a carefully curated mix of brilliant minds. Dr. Amber Thompson stood near the back, her research serving as the cornerstone of their entire operation. Beside her, Dr. Elena Zhao continued refining the neural disruption frequency, pushing the boundaries of what was scientifically possible. The nickname came first from the military personnel, a dark humor response to years of being treated as second-class players in galactic politics. The Terran Psychological Warfare Division quickly became known as the Fukoff Force, a name that perfectly captured their mission of diplomatic neutralization. Training became an intense, multidisciplinary approach. Recruits weren't just selected for physical prowess or traditional military skills. They were chosen for psychological resilience, neural adaptability, and an almost supernatural capacity to remain calm under extreme pressure. Captain Sarah Jenkins led the first recruitment phase. Her selection process was brutal and unconventional. Candidates underwent a series of tests that went far beyond traditional military screening. Neurological stress tests that pushed human cognitive limits. Psychological evaluations that examined not just mental stability, but the capacity for innovative thinking under extreme conditions. Simulated diplomatic scenarios where recruits had to navigate increasingly complex alien communication patterns. "We're looking for people who can think 5 steps ahead," Jenkins would explain to bewildered candidates. "People who understand that the most powerful weapon is the one that never needs to be fired." The facility itself was a marvel of human engineering. Constructed deep within the Rocky Mountains, it was part research center, part military installation, part psychological training ground. Shielded from external communication frequencies, equipped with the most advanced neural mapping technology available, it represented humanity's commitment to understanding and mastering interspecies communication. Michael Rodriguez understood the broader implications better than anyone. This wasn't just about creating a defensive mechanism. It was about fundamentally reshaping humanity's position in the galactic hierarchy. "For centuries, we've been told we're too young, too primitive," he would say during strategy meetings. "Today, we prove that adaptability is our greatest strength." The first prototype devices were nothing like traditional weapons. Small, almost inconspicuous, they represented a quantum leap in communication technology. Each device could be calibrated to specific neural network architectures, allowing for precise, targeted disruption across multiple species. Amber's original research had revealed something profound. Human neural networks possessed a unique plasticity that made them resistant to the very frequencies that could disable other species. It was an evolutionary quirk, a result of humanity's diverse environmental challenges, that now became their greatest asset. Training simulations became increasingly complex. Recruits learned to navigate diplomatic scenarios where a single frequency pulse could neutralize entire negotiation teams. They studied alien communication patterns, learning to read the subtlest neural indicators that preceded potential conflict. "The Fukoff Force is not about aggression," Michael would repeatedly emphasize. "It's about creating a new paradigm of conflict resolution. We can stop wars before they begin, neutralize threats without a single casualty." But not everyone saw it that way. Ethical debates raged both within the program and in global political circles. Was this a tool of peace or a form of psychological warfare? The line became increasingly blurry. Captain Jenkins understood the complexity better than most. During a particularly heated strategy session, she laid out the fundamental truth of their mission. "We're not conquerors," she said, her voice cutting through the room's tension. "We're negotiators. And for the first time in human history, we're negotiating from a position of true strength. The first full-scale training exercise would become legendary within the program. A simulated diplomatic encounter that pushed every technological and psychological boundary. Recruits would need to demonstrate not just the ability to disrupt, but the wisdom to know when disruption was necessary. Humanity stood at the precipice of a new era of interstellar diplomacy, and the Fukoff force would be its vanguard. The neural disruption frequency pulsed softly in the background, a quiet reminder of the power they now possessed. The communication burst arrived simultaneously across thousands of planetary networks. Encrypted, compressed, but unmistakable. Humans had developed a technology that could neutralize entire diplomatic and military operations with a simple frequency pulse. In the crystalline communication hubs of the Creel Collective, senior administrators froze mid-transaction. Their quantum-linked neural networks processed the information with increasing dread. The Zorn diplomatic recordings had been thoroughly analyzed, verified, and disseminated, and they revealed something terrifying. Humans could stop them. Completely. Instantly. Without warning. On the homeworld of the Nexus Confederation, emergency sessions erupted into chaos. Holographic displays flickered with intercepted human communications, each replay of the Zorn encounter sending new waves of panic through the assembled representatives. "This is impossible," Chancellor Krelax of the Quantum Coordination Council stammered, his translucent neural projections wavering with uncertainty. A species we've categorized as emerging has developed a communication disruption technology that works across multiple neural architectures. The panic spread faster than any conventional communication method could track. Within hours, multiple galactic communication networks began implementing emergency protocols. Defensive measures were proposed, discarded, reimagined, and proposed again, each iteration more desperate than the last. The Zorn Imperium, traditionally the most technologically advanced military force in known space, found themselves in an unprecedented position of vulnerability. Their extensive communication networks, which had been the foundation of their galactic dominance, now seemed like an elaborate trap waiting to be sprung. Dr. Elena Zhao watched the galactic response with a mixture of scientific fascination and professional detachment. The neural mapping systems she had helped develop were working perfectly, revealing the intricate ways different species process threat information. "It's not about the weapon," she explained to a closed session of human diplomatic advisors. "It's about the psychological impact. We've demonstrated that we can interrupt communication at will, across multiple species. That's more powerful than any physical weapon." Diplomatic backchannels exploded with speculation. Some alien civilizations proposed immediate sanctions against Earth. Others suggested preemptive military action. But each proposal ran into the same fundamental problem. How do you attack a species that can neutralize your entire communication and military infrastructure with a simple frequency pulse? The Creel Collective's response was particularly telling. They began developing complex neural shielding technologies, pouring resources into research that might protect their communication networks. But each solution was met with rapid adaptation from human researchers. For the first time in galactic history, an emerging species had demonstrated a capability that completely upended existing power structures. Michael Rodriguez understood the deeper implications. This wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was a fundamental reshaping of interstellar diplomacy. Humanity had transformed from a species that was repeatedly ignored to one that could not be dismissed. Emergency sessions of the Galactic Consortium became exercises in barely contained panic. Representatives from various species found themselves unable to complete diplomatic discussions, constantly aware that a simple human device could render them temporarily inert. The psychological warfare was as important as the technological capability. Humans weren't just demonstrating a technical skill. They were revealing a level of innovative thinking that terrified more established civilizations. Captain Sarah Jenkins received reports from diplomatic outposts across multiple star systems. The responses were consistent: fear, uncertainty, and a grudging respect for human ingenuity. "We've changed the game," she told her team. "No shots fired. No lives lost. Just a simple demonstration of our capability." The Nexus Confederation attempted to rally other species against humanity, but their communications were repeatedly disrupted, their diplomatic efforts neutralized before they could gain momentum. Amber Thompson watched the global response with a mix of scientific excitement and ethical concern. The technology she had discovered was working exactly as predicted, but the broader implications were more complex than anyone had initially understood. As galactic communication networks continued to buzz with panic and speculation, one thing became abundantly clear: humanity was no longer a species to be overlooked. The neural disruption frequency pulsed softly in the background, a quiet reminder of the new balance of power. The galaxy would never be the same again. The research complex of the Creel Collective stretched across 3 artificial planetary cores, a testament to their technological prowess. Thousands of silicon-based researchers worked in perfect synchronization, their mission singular and urgent: develop a defense against human neural disruption technology. Chief Researcher Zegznal slammed a crystalline appendage against the primary analysis platform. Another proposed shielding mechanism had failed spectacularly during simulations. Each attempt met the same frustrating conclusion: the human frequency adaptation was faster than anything in their technological history. "We cannot be defeated by an emerging species," Zegznal proclaimed to the assembled research team. "Our technological superiority is absolute." But the data told a different story. Every neural shielding prototype developed by the Creel Collective was systematically dismantled by human researchers. What should have been a simple technological challenge had become a nightmare of continuous adaptation and failure. Dr. Amber Thompson received constant updates from the Diplomatic Intelligence Division. Each alien civilization's attempt at resistance provided valuable data, expanding humanity's understanding of neural communication architectures. The Zorn Imperium took a more aggressive approach. They began developing electromagnetic countermeasures, complex devices designed to create interference patterns that might disrupt the human neural disruption technology. Their best engineers worked around the clock, pushing the boundaries of their technological capabilities. Michael Rodriguez reviewed the intercepted communications with a calculated calm. Each alien attempt revealed more about their communication vulnerabilities. It was almost like watching children learn to build increasingly complex sandcastles, only to have them washed away by a rising tide. "Adaptation is our greatest strength," he would remind the team repeatedly. "We're not just blocking their attempts. We're learning from them." The neural mapping laboratories beneath the Rocky Mountains became a hub of intense research. Every piece of data from alien resistance attempts was analyzed, cataloged, and integrated into their growing understanding of interspecies neural communication. Captain Sarah Jenkins oversaw the most classified aspects of the research. The Psychological Warfare Division was no longer just a defensive unit. It had become the most advanced communication research team in human history. On the crystalline homeworld of the Creel Collective, entire research generations were dedicated to solving the human neural disruption puzzle. Billions of computational cycles were spent analyzing the smallest details of the frequency that could render their most advanced communication networks temporarily inert. "It defies our understanding of quantum communication," one senior Creel researcher lamented during a classified transmission. "How can a species so young demonstrate such profound understanding of neural network manipulation?" The Nexus Confederation took a different approach. Instead of direct technological resistance, they began exploring diplomatic strategies. They attempted to isolate humanity diplomatically, to create coalitions that might counter the neural disruption threat. But each diplomatic effort failed. Humans had discovered something profound, a technological capability that went beyond traditional weapons or communication barriers. They had found a way to temporarily neutralize entire civilizations without causing physical harm. Dr. Elena Zhou continued refining the neural disruption frequency. Each alien resistance attempt provided new data points, allowing for increasingly precise communication interruption methods. "We're not just developing a weapon," She explained during a classified briefing. We're developing a new approach to conflict resolution. The ability to pause communication without destruction is revolutionary. The research became a complex dance of technological innovation. Alien civilizations would develop a potential shield, and human researchers would adapt within weeks. The speed of human innovation became itself a weapon, a psychological deterrent that was more powerful than any physical threat. The Sentinel and a Creole research team worked for months on a breakthrough neural shielding prototype. When they finally completed their most advanced design, human researchers had already developed 3 methods to bypass it. The galactic balance of power was shifting, not through traditional warfare, but through an unprecedented understanding of communication itself. As resistance attempts continued, one thing became increasingly clear. Humanity was no longer an emerging species to be ignored. They were a force that would reshape the fundamental understanding of interstellar diplomacy. The neural disruption frequency pulsed softly, a quiet reminder of humanity's new position in the galaxy. The conference room at the United Nations Interstellar Ethics Committee was unusually silent. Dr. Amber Thompson sat at the center of a semicircle of global leaders, her hands folded carefully on the polished surface before her. The weight of her discovery pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden. We've created something unprecedented, she began, her voice steady despite the internal turmoil. A technology that can neutralize communication across entire species without causing physical harm. But the ethical implications are far more complex than our initial research suggested. The committee members represented a cross-section of global perspectives. Military strategists sat alongside humanitarian experts, philosophical scholars beside technological innovators. Each brought a different lens to the emerging ethical dilemma. General Marcus Henderson represented the military perspective. We've developed the most effective diplomatic tool in human history, he argued. For the first time, we can prevent conflicts before they begin. No lives lost. No physical destruction. Dr. Elena Zhao, who had been instrumental in refining the neural disruption technology, presented a more nuanced view. It's not just about prevention, she explained. We're fundamentally altering the nature of interspecies communication. We're creating a pause button for diplomatic interactions. The philosophical implications were staggering. Humanity had discovered a way to temporarily suspend communication across entire civilizations. It was more than a weapon. It was a new form of diplomatic engagement. Professor David Rothschild, a leading expert in interstellar ethics, raised a critical point. We must consider the psychological impact, he warned. Imagine being rendered completely unable to communicate, to move, to think, even temporarily. The trauma could be profound. Michael Rodriguez understood the complexity better than most. As the lead strategist for the Terran Psychological Warfare Division, he had witnessed firsthand the technology's potential for both peace and manipulation. Our goal was never domination, he said during a private strategy session. It was about creating a new paradigm of conflict resolution, a way to force dialogue when traditional methods fail. The ethical debates raged across multiple platforms. Academic journals published extensive analyses. Global news networks ran continuous debates. The scientific community found itself divided. Some argued that the technology represented the most humane form of conflict prevention in human history. Others saw it as a form of psychological warfare that could be worse than physical violence. Dr. Thompson's original research had never intended this outcome. Her work had been a pure scientific exploration of neural communication patterns. The weaponization, or diplomatic tool, depending on perspective, had been an unexpected consequence. We've created something that challenges our entire understanding of conflict, she told the ethics committee. It's not about stopping wars through force. It's about creating a moment of forced reflection. The global response was equally complex. Some nations wanted immediate restrictions on the technology. Others saw it as humanity's greatest diplomatic achievement. Captain Sarah Jenkins presented a compelling argument during a closed-door military strategy session. We're not silencing anyone, she explained. We're creating a universal pause button, a way to prevent escalation before it begins. The technological implications went far beyond military strategy. Medical researchers saw potential applications in treating neurological disorders. Psychological experts explored the potential for conflict resolution in ways previously unimaginable. Dr. Zhao's team continued refining the technology, focusing on increasingly precise applications. Could they develop a version that allowed partial communication, a method of diplomatic intervention that was even more nuanced? The ethical debate became a microcosm of humanity's broader challenge. How does a species responsibly wield a technology that fundamentally changes the nature of interaction? Professor Rothschild summarized the complexity during a global broadcast. "We stand at a unique moment in human history," he said. "We've discovered a method of communication that is simultaneously a weapon and a peacekeeping tool." As the debates continued, one thing became clear. The neural disruption technology was more than a scientific breakthrough. It was a philosophical challenge that would define humanity's role in the galaxy. The technology represented a fundamental reimagining of conflict resolution. No longer would diplomatic disagreements escalate through traditional means. Humanity had created a method of forced dialogue, a technological timeout that could prevent catastrophic conflicts. Dr. Thompson looked at the assembled committee, understanding the profound responsibility they now carried. Humanity had changed the rules of engagement, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Interstellar Unity Conference had been decades in the planning. Hosted on a massive neutral space station constructed at the gravitational intersection of three major galactic territories, it represented the most ambitious diplomatic gathering in known history. Representatives from 127 different species gathered in a massive circular chamber designed to represent equality. Holographic translation matrices hummed with millions of simultaneous communication protocols. Diplomatic security teams from multiple civilizations monitored every conceivable threat vector. No one noticed the small device Commander Jack Reynolds carried. Dr. Amber Thompson watched from a secure observation room, her fingers tracing the holographic displays that showed the intricate neural network mappings of each species present. Months of preparation had led to this moment, a demonstration that would reshape galactic diplomacy forever. The conference began with typical diplomatic posturing. The Zorn Imperium representatives spoke first, their crystalline communication clusters vibrating with practiced intimidation. Representatives from the Creole Collective listened with barely contained skepticism. The Nexus Confederation delegates maintained their characteristic quantum-linked composure. Michael Rodriguez stood beside Jack, both of them models of calm professionalism. Years of preparation had led to this single moment of potential transformation. "Frequency calibration is perfect." Dr. Elena Zhou's voice came through their secure communication channel. All neural mapping signatures confirmed. Jack Reynolds approached the central podium. The universal translator picked up his words, broadcasting them across multiple communication spectrums. "Distinguished representatives," he began, "humanity comes before this conference with a proposal that will fundamentally change our approach to interstellar diplomacy." What happened next would be recorded in galactic historical archives for centuries. A single pulse, barely perceptible, completely silent. Every single representative from the 127 different species froze simultaneously. Not a violent freezing, not a destructive interruption, just a complete, instantaneous neural pause. The observation room erupted in a mixture of scientific excitement and professional tension. Dr. Thompson watched the neural network displays with clinical precision. Each species' communication pathway showed the same precise interruption, a universal pause button that worked across seemingly incompatible neural architectures. 47 minutes. That was the precise duration calculated by their research team. Long enough to make a point, short enough to avoid permanent diplomatic damage. Captain Sarah Jenkins monitored the global communication networks. The response was immediate and universal. Shock, fear, and a grudging respect for human technological capability. "We're not demonstrating a weapon," Michael Rodriguez explained to the stunned observation team. "We're demonstrating a new approach to conflict resolution. When the representatives began to unfreeze, the chamber remained silent. The psychological impact was more powerful than any traditional diplomatic pressure could ever be. The Zorn Imperium representatives looked particularly shaken. Their previous dismissals of human capability had been completely dismantled in a single moment. High Consul Vexnar, who had once treated human diplomats with open contempt, now struggled to maintain composure. The realization was clear in his crystalline sensory clusters. Humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. Dr. Zhou's neural mapping team had prepared extensively. They had studied every possible response, every potential diplomatic fallout. But the actual moment exceeded even their most sophisticated predictions. Complete neural network coverage, she muttered, reviewing the real-time data. 100% synchronization across all present species. The diplomatic recordings would be analyzed for decades. Scholars would debate the ethical and technological implications, but in that moment, humanity had made its statement clear. We can pause the galaxy. We choose not to destroy. We choose to create a moment of forced reflection. Commander Reynolds returned to the observation room. The weight of the moment hung heavily in the air. "Well," he said with a slight smile, "I believe we've made our point." Dr. Thompson looked at the holographic displays. Millions of neural networks, momentarily synchronized. A technological achievement that represented more than military might. It represented a fundamental reimagining of interspecies communication. The galaxy would never be the same again. The diplomatic landscape transformed overnight. Where once humanity had been a footnote in galactic affairs, they now became the most critically discussed species in known space. Dr. Amber Thompson watched the global response from her research facility, understanding that their technological breakthrough had done more than just demonstrate capability. It had fundamentally rewritten the rules of interstellar engagement. The Zorn Imperium was the first to formally request diplomatic negotiations. Their previous posture of technological superiority had been completely dismantled. High Consul Vexnar arrived at the Human Diplomatic Center with a delegation that was remarkable for its humility, a stark contrast to their previous aggressive encounters. "We must understand," Vexnar stated during the first post-demonstration meeting, "how you achieved what no species has ever conceived." Michael Rodriguez handled the negotiations with calculated precision. The neural disruption technology wasn't just a defensive mechanism. It had become the most powerful diplomatic tool in human history. The Creel Collective's response was equally telling. Their entire research infrastructure redirected its focus. Instead of attempting to develop countermeasures, they began exploring collaborative research with human scientists. The silicon-based researchers recognized that humanity had discovered something profound. A method of communication that transcended traditional technological barriers. Captain Sarah Jenkins oversaw the diplomatic transition. The Terran Psychological Warfare Division was no longer just a military research unit. It had become the most critical diplomatic resource humanity had ever developed. "We're not conquerors," she would repeatedly explain to various diplomatic delegations. "We're communication specialists. We've discovered a way to create meaningful dialogue where traditional methods have failed." The global economic impact was immediate and far-reaching. Human communication technology became the most sought-after resource in the galaxy. Research institutions, diplomatic centers, and technological firms competed to understand and potentially replicate the neural disruption capabilities. Dr. Elena Zhou continued refining the technology. Each diplomatic interaction provided new data, new insights into the complex neural communication architectures of different species. What had begun as a scientific curiosity had transformed into humanity's most significant technological achievement. The United Nations Interstellar Diplomatic Corps underwent a complete restructuring. Traditional military strategists were replaced by neural communication experts. Diplomacy became less about traditional negotiation and more about understanding the fundamental communication mechanisms of different species. During a classified briefing, Michael Rodriguez outlined the broader strategy. "We're not just neutralizing communication," he explained. "We're creating a universal pause button, a method of forcing reflection before conflict escalates. The Nexus Confederation, once the most technologically advanced communication network in known space, now sought human collaboration. Their quantum-linked communication systems seemed primitive compared to humanity's neural disruption capabilities. Alien civilizations that had previously ignored or dismissed humanity now sought partnerships. Scientific exchanges became the new form of interstellar diplomacy. The neural disruption technology represented more than a defensive mechanism. It was a tool for understanding, for creating moments of forced reflection. Dr. Thompson reflected on the journey. Her original research had been a pure scientific exploration. The technological implications had been an unexpected consequence. Now, humanity stood at the forefront of a communication revolution that would reshape galactic interactions for generations. The ethical debates continued, but with a different tone. No longer were they discussions of potential weapon development. They were explorations of a new approach to conflict resolution, a method of creating dialogue where traditional approaches had failed. Commander Jack Reynolds received diplomatic invitations from species that had once treated humans with open contempt. The neural disruption demonstration had done more than showcase technological capability. It had proven humanity's unique approach to problem-solving. Research institutions across the globe celebrated. This was more than a technological achievement. It was a fundamental reimagining of interspecies communication. The Terran Psychological Warfare Division became the most prestigious research and diplomatic unit in human history. Young scientists and diplomats competed for positions, understanding that they were part of something unprecedented. As the galactic political landscape transformed, one thing became abundantly clear. Humanity was no longer an emerging species to be ignored. They had discovered something profound, a way to create dialogue, to force reflection, to prevent conflict before it could begin. The neural disruption frequency continued to pulse softly, a quiet reminder of humanity's new position in the galaxy. The rules had changed, and humanity had changed them.